Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity to drive your career forward. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Robert Glazer. He is the founder and CEO of global partner marketing agency Acceleration Partners. He is also the co-founder and chairman of Brand Cycle. Robert is a serial entrepreneur with a passion for helping individuals and organizations build their capacity to elevate. And I'm excited to unpack his career journey, wisdom and insights, and a whole lot more. Robert Glazer, welcome to the podcast.
Adam, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get started here. And I was telling you before we went on the air, I really like to dig in to the early part of someone's career journey because I think there's so much gold in there, the successes, the failures, and the life lessons learned there. And you started your career out as a business analyst at Arthur D. Little, which is, I believe, the oldest management consulting company in the world. Right?
They acted like it, but
right, they were exchanging for billions of gold for their 1 hour of my services is worth 4 billion gold bullions. No, but seriously, like, how did you know early on, like that element of consulting, for somebody else was something you wanted to be part of? Or how'd you fall into that?
Yeah, I you don't know what, as you're growing up as a kid, you think like doctor, lawyer, like you don't understand, very firefighter, baseball player, very specific options. I think when I got into college and I learned more about management consulting and strategy, I'm like, oh, you parachute into these different businesses, you understand them, you solve problems. I had worked as an intern actually for ADL when I did a semester in Prague, and so I just really loved that sort of I like growth and variety. So I was drawn to that business. It's super competitive. And so they were, I had worked with them abroad. It was fun. And I was in the high tech practice. It was right when the internet was starting.
Yeah,
and we were in the telecom practice, which sort of inherited the internet stuff. And, you parachute in, you learn an industry really quickly and you try to, figure it out.
Yeah. And if you look back on that time, was there a couple of key lessons that you learned that you apply even to this day, like some of those fundamental lessons in the way you approach business strategy?
I mean, one of the things I learned, I'll never forget a company that we had worked with that just had a market-leading product. It was driven by engineers. It was the internet bubble. And the guy just wouldn't ever release it. It just was never perfect. It was the opposite of MVP. And this company lost 9 months and probably could have sold this thing for, we have equity in it as the business, tens of millions of dollars. I invested in it, but it just never was ready, and he wanted it to be perfect. And I think that's a lesson that has definitely stayed with me.
Action over perfection, right? Get the ball rolling on things, keep things moving. And following that,
get it out, get feedback. Yeah. You're going to be wrong, so figure out how people use it. Yeah.
I mean, think of even like software on your phone. What are they up to on my iPhone? It's got updated like software version 14.93.19er. Like it's iterations, and you keep moving it forward. And following that, you founded several of your own companies like Brand Stamp, Bobby's Best, Brand Cycle, as well as some other projects. How did your time, in that consulting world, prepare you to go out on your own?
So I had a weird thing where I was very conviction, strong ideas, very strong opinions, but sort of risk intolerant. And I reached a point where I helped build this business for 2 other founders and realized I loved the growth in building these businesses, but I was really not going to put myself in a great position just making a career growing other people's businesses and felt very marginalized in that situation. I was talking to a friend who was trying to recruit me out to a company in California and said, if you don't take this job, you're probably going to be unemployable. And he meant that in sort of a nice way, that he could just see I was getting to the point where like I just wasn't going to, want to work for other people. And I did sort of reach that point and flipped over. And after, a bunch of failures, helping other people try to grow their businesses, saying, I love these high growth businesses, but I'm going to start my own vehicle to do that. And actually, when I started Acceleration Partners, I thought it would be a great way to try before I buy, having been burned, and that I would want to jump into one of these businesses. But I realized I liked working with them, not for them. Startups are like very crazy. They don't have great cultures. Like you hear about the winners, but the losers are 90%.
Oh, outnumber them completely.
So I just tried to develop a company that was a great place to work, fun, but had worked again with those companies, not for them.
Well, that's interesting too. I mean, we're going to dig into this in a little bit, but might as well talk about it now. You focus a lot. We'll talk about the TEDx talk in a little bit. We'll talk about the book out there. Why, is culture and the way the companies operate from a people, leadership, and management perspective, why does it resonate so much with you?
Because I just realized, one of the things as I was building the company was like, I never wanted to build a company that was not, I didn't want to go to work to every day, that it just had some goal and willing to get there, was not want to be fun. So I was like, look, if I want to wake up and like what I'm doing every day, I've got to like the people that I'm doing with. We should do what we say. We should say what we do. And it just became like, again, we always talk about like the journey is the destination a little bit, at our company, not like the ends justifies the means. So that was really a very selfish motivation of like, I want to build a company. I don't want to deal with all the BS and bullshit and, politics and all this stuff. So we're just going to try to do it differently. And look, there's a lot of stuff about culture. To me, cultures are as different as, my oldest daughter is out touring colleges on break this week. Like they have very different value propositions, right? The 40,000 person city school is probably not going to appeal to the 2,000 person liberal art, in the middle of nowhere school. So I think companies really struggle to be like, here is what we value. Here's where we're different. You might like that value proposition or you might not like that value proposition. It's not a good or a bad. It's just a matter of fit.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You say that, like, I think the struggle with a lot of companies is transitioning the values on paper or what they got, plastered on the wall into action. And I always say this, culture is not, ping pong tables and cold brew on tap.
That often hides a bad culture or
Exactly.
tries to keep you in the office all day.
Lots of snacks and candy, right? Yeah. And I do miss that. I wouldn't mind going back to the office for some of those snacks. But you kind of hit the nail on the head. It masks what the real issues are. But I truly believe, and I'd love to get your take on it, it's how someone feels valued within an organization. Do they have a clear career path? Are they getting feedback? Are they getting direction? Are they being mentored in the right way? And I think that's really what the culture is.
Well, that's personal development, which is part of culture. But I think I paraphrase from a Gandhi quote. I think a great culture is super simple. What it believes is what it says is what it does, right? Those things are aligned. So because I think that there are some cultures, for instance, you'll have an ex-athlete who's super competitive, believes in winning and losing, pays 80% of the bonuses to 20% of the people. And then they say crap and put it on the wall that like, we value teamwork. Right. No, you don't value teamwork. You value winning. But if you said that, there's plenty of people out there who value winning who would say, I want to come work for a company that values winning. People are just afraid to be honest and authentic about what it is that they value. So our company is, look, we've won 30 Best Places to Work awards. I will tell you, based on our recruiting averages, and then we hire about 1.5% of the people, we are that place for about 1.5% of the population, not for the other 90.
And you're clear about that, and you're upfront about that. So let's talk about that. And how is your sourcing, recruiting, and hiring process aligned to those values to really ensure that the folks that are coming in at the top of the funnel are ultimately the right people that get hired?
Yeah, so our process is very thorough. It tries to eliminate a ton of bias. It's based on Jeff Smart work, who's the number one guy in the space with top grading and who, and we focus first on values and then on aptitude. So again, this isn't like, these are behavioral based interview questions. There's probably 7 or 8 per core value. They're asked lots of different ways. So for example, we have a core value of excel and improve. We believe in like continuous improvement and people that don't like the status quo, want to learn and grow. So if I'm interviewing Adam, Adam, tell me a book that you've read in the last couple of years or a course you've taken or something, where you're trying to get better. If you're crickets on that, you're not our type of person. And there's a lot of candidates like that. And not only are the questions designed, our interviewers are given, this is what a 1 answer sounds like. This is what a 10 answer sounds like. And so when they sit down at the end of the interview, they look at all the data and they don't go, you know what, I love Adam, but like, and I liked Adam because he was super personable and persuasive. But like, if I look at the data, it's telling me that Adam's not the right fit for here.
The data tells the story. And it's interesting, too, because some people are great interviewers, but when the rubber hits the road, they're not performing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know from my past, I was
Look,
a great
extroverts are great interviewers. Charismatic people tell you everything you want to hear. I think you some of your worst hires are probably, extroverted, charismatic people that were not a fit. And some of the ones you missed were probably a little more introverted and not as stomping their chest about how great they were at things.
And yeah, absolutely. And Robert, you hit on something really important that I think is a major reason why a lot of companies make mistakes and fail in the hiring process is because they're not consistent. They don't have a consistent plan. They don't have consistent questions across all of the interviewers in the process, and they don't have a database scoring system. Because otherwise,
they also haven't defined success up front, right?
Right.
So you should have all the fights and whatever. Be like, what are Adam's top 5 that in 6 months I'm going to give him a bonus or tell him that he's no longer working here, and get that. People call me all the time. They're like, "Can I get your opinion?" Like what? And they're like, "Well, we're looking to do a sales and marketing role," and I'm like, "Oh, well, stop there. Like, is it sales or is it market? Like, this is where this person is going to have a not clear set of objectives when they come in, right? So first you've got to agree on the outcomes. And then based on the outcomes, what are the qualities the person has to have? And then you interview against them. Because again, when you have this committee approach and you have this numeric approach, we might all say, look, we all loved Adam. Adam was awesome. But like everyone's things came up with that Adam does not have attention to detail. And attention to detail was our number one. He was a little late for the meeting. He did this. He missed the directions. Like,
those are things you need.
Am I confusing that I liked him as a person with that he has the qualities to do the job?
Yeah, and that there has to be that separation there. And was it hard to? Let me ask you this: was that the plan from the beginning when you launched Acceleration Partners, when you were talking about your hiring and building as a team, or was that something that kind of evolved? It fell into place. Where did you stand on that when you were creating?
No, I think that was something that evolved, and we realized we had to do over frustration and mishire. I mean, you learn from your mistakes. Like I say, all of our senior leaders in our organization, they have a name. They have a name of that disaster hire that they hired by cutting corners that made them take hiring more seriously, and they vowed to never make that mistake again.
They either looked at a resume like just, oh my God, look at the credentials.
Or they rushed the process, or they needed someone.
Hire slow, fire fast, right?
Yeah, so one of the things about the committee approach at the end is that there has someone in there who's not part of the team that needs that hire, who can objectively like say, look, guys, I know you're desperate for a marketing person, but this person is not Acceleration Partners type person.
Consensus is important, and one of my clients does that really well, where it's not just there is a key stakeholder, the hiring manager typically, who's responsible, but it's a consensus, and that helps do a lot of things. It's another point of view, helps further reduce bias out of it, and someone who's objective, someone who could come into your point and say, listen, this person's important to me, but I'm maybe a step removed on that one.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I actually think in a lot of areas of business, you can't have consensus, right? You need someone to just sort of own it. But in hiring, you really should have everyone be like Derek Sivers, like, this is a hell yeah or no. A lot of people get hired because no one wants to say no. Like, in our process ends with like, are you enthusiastically in support of this candidate? Are they better than 90% of the people? And would you put your name on their hire? And that changes the standard, from they just kind of get through because no one objects to someone is willing to put their name behind the candidate.
I love that. I love that, the hell yeah or no, because that's the way it should be. I mean, you're welcoming, you're bringing somebody into your work family, into something that you created, and you want everyone to be aligned and not feel that you have to pick up the slack for somebody. And we talk about, in the TEDx, it's the attrition, it's the negative feelings of other employees that they have to pick up the slack. Like, all these factors roll into why it's so critical to make that good hire. It's not about just that job and that position that person is filling, but the rest of the team, and being mindful that you're helping support them with a quality hire.
Yeah, it's interesting. People always get caught around, $10,000 or $20,000. My new thing is like, it's going to be worth all of it or none of it, pretty much, with people.
Boom. That's a clip right there, people. We're going to do that one. So I want to talk for a second about your core values course, and that has a lot to do with finding your purpose and why. And it's interesting, I found it interesting that the course only takes 60 minutes, and you say in the description to continue it. Tell us about what that course is about, who it's for, and what that helps unlock.
Yeah, so figuring out my personal core values was the transformative moment in my career. I came out of a leadership thing. I was really clear that I had to do it, but there wasn't a way to do it. So I researched, I looked, I found, I figured it out after 6 to 12 months. I actually found the experience so powerful that we started building a curriculum to teach our new leaders how they could discover their core values, kind of like what I had fallen into, turning that into a process. We did it for 3 or 4 classes, just saw really great results where people were like, oh my God, I never realized this. This clicks for me. This is why I show up this way as a leader. This is why I show up this way as a husband or wife. Like, it's all the same thing. And I said, wow, I'd love to open this up. So I turned that curriculum into a course so that anyone could take it, so that we could have our whole company take it, and then also, release it to the public. And I particularly coming out of a pandemic year when I think people, a lot of value oriented things, it is the most changing thing I think in your life or as a leader is to be able to, look at those 4 or 5 things, articulate your values, say, look, I'm going to get out of stuff that doesn't align. I talk about the big 3. I think if you don't make decisions in the big 3 that are aligned with your core value, they will fail. And that is your chosen work and vocation, where you choose to live in the community, that you get into, and your chosen partner, right? Those, I'm not saying this is like a company. It's not about, you don't want people like you or homogeneity or otherwise, but this is like, are you aligned on the big things? Like, my wife and I are like very different hobbies, different things, but like, if you're not, when the shit hit in the fan, if you're not aligned on the big things, it's not going to work.
I completely agree with that, and we'll definitely link up to the course there. And I also see you reference Jim Collins and his concepts he's coined, Big, Hairy, Audacious Goals, BHAG for short, a lot in your blogs and your posts. What is it about his work or perspectives that truly resonates with you?
Yeah, I think, what's interesting is that a BHAG should fulfill a value, or else it won't be meaningful to you. So I think there is this alignment, but I think we do need these kind of long-term things that we're going towards to understand how to make better decisions in the short term. But here's the example I always give. Like, oh, you want a house on the lake. Why do you want a house on the lake? Let's be honest with ourselves. Like, is it, because everyone wants a beach or lake house, is it a demonstration of success?
Is it for you or for them?
or is it really for your family? Because a lot of people will say it's for their family, and in the service of getting that big beach house for their family, they get divorced and alienate all their kids and work 80 hours a week. So it's probably not going to make you fulfilled when you get it. So there's a great example where, like, if wanting that place was fulfilled, it was part of your value of family or tied to that, then you would never want to sacrifice family to get it. If it was really about I've made it, then, and your ego, then you might want to sacrifice all that stuff to do it. But you have to be intellectually honest with yourself. So I think a lot of us are actually chasing goals that aren't going to make us very happy, because that goal should fulfill your value, your purpose somehow, or else it's probably a goal that you took from external pressure of what other people thought you should do.
The common theme here, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is ultimate self-awareness. Really knowing that true self and being able to have the framework to put a mirror up in front of you.
So self-awareness and alignment, right? That's the key. So who am I? What do I want? And then how do I align? Like, how do I, this is where the values in the company come into play in the interviewing. Like, I know what I want. I know the type of people that I want. So why am I going to say crap I don't believe? And let me find the people who want to do the same thing as me and say, this is what we're doing.
And you have a BHAG of your own. And I believe one of those was to become a best-selling author, which we've done. And let's talk about the product placement, new book, the latest book right here. And before I ask you about the book, I just want to, once I got this into my hands the other day, and thank you, just physically, the first observation I made physically, it was different. I have a lot of books. I interview a lot of authors on this show, and they're either these loosey-goosey kind of paperback or these giant hardcover books. I love the size of it. It's manageable. I like a hardcover in my hand here.
Yeah.
And it has just enough, graphics, pictures, different formats of the text here to keep you engaged. Talk about the intention of the size and the format of this book for a moment. I'm
Yeah,
really
so
interested.
it's interesting. My publisher.
I had this observation this morning when I was kind of scrolling through it.
Look, this is a new direction, right? When you think about most nonfiction books, people probably have a 20 or 30,000 word idea. They take it to the publisher and they say this has to be a $30 book, so double it. And most people tell you they get about a third of the nonfiction books are very repetitive. They make their point early, so it's like this artificial kind of marketing, constraints. What Sourcebooks has done is build sort of a series called Simple Truths, a leadership series, where the books are half the price, half the length. They're designed to, get one a month and read it in an hour. And it's funny because people always say, I finished your whole book. And I know you're looking for a pat on the back, but it was designed to be read in an hour. So it's not a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to scrolling through this one. And it looks like I used to read a lot more before kids, and I've gotten back into reading more now that I do the show. And I just love the idea of it being digestible, that I don't have to commit for the next month to read this book, 20 pages a day.
Look at the success of Blinkist and all of these like highlighting services that give you the main points in 10 minutes, right? I mean, you have probably people reading more of those than they are of the actual 100%. Book itself.
100%. Yeah. Book's awesome. Definitely everyone check it out. Let's talk about the TEDx. I mean, the TEDx Experience. Was this always a topic that you wanted to do for your TEDx? Or what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it the topic or the TEDx?
There were a couple things, and it was a chicken and egg, and I had the opportunity, and I talked to him about a couple ideas, and that was the one that felt really, different and relevant at the time. So I actually think it just all came together time-wise.
Yeah, and let's unpack this for a little bit. 2 weeks notice, and I've watched it a couple times, and this is something that really resonates with me, changing the dynamic. And the example you give right in the upfront about the relationship, would you say to a wife, well, maybe in a divorce, but it's like, right, like, hey, honey, I'm giving you 2 weeks notice on this. No.
Yeah, I'm moving to a new town with a new boyfriend in 2 weeks, and you never talked about being unhappy in your marriage. Like, you'd be a little surprised, I think.
And it's the idea, it's changing the whole dynamic of a company recognizing someone's happiness. Because the grass, I mean, I know from personal experience, I was telling you offline, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And job satisfaction could decline, and that could either be an employee's responsibility, the employer's responsibility. So why not make it more beneficial to everyone involved to reconfigure the process?
Look, we're ignoring reality. So intellectually, we know that there's no more employment for life. There's no more pension.
No one's lifers at Ford. I mean, my parents are New York City Board of Ed teachers. I mean, that's probably one of the only
we know
professions.
This. We know at Google and Facebook and all the best places to work, the tenure is like 1.8 years. So we understand the concept that people are not going to work forever. But when we get down to the last mile, we're all pretending, right? So we still have to lie and do doctor's appointments, and companies still have to like dodge around and put you on a performance improvement.
To school. Yeah.
Right. Put you on a performance improvement plan or whatever, versus saying like, I want to do something different, or this isn't working. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance where once we know it's not going to work out, then we have to make the other person out to be sort of bad, rather than say, look, like McKinsey's done this for years. Why don't we can have a transition period? Like if you want to do something else, rather than as a client service business, surprise us with 2 weeks notice if you're lucky these days, maybe 5 days notice. Like tell us before you start looking, tell us you want to leave. We'll let you continue to work here for months. You can start your new job. We'll be a reference for you, and and you'll become part of our alumni network. And let's acknowledge that, because people saw this in the pandemic and the economy's coming back. But you had 10 years where you could just screw the last job, move on, burn your bridges. And there were no consequences. And in a tough job market, like you're going to need people to pull you forward, or people that you work forward. And when you have a mentor, a boss, and you told them you're happy, and then you just leave on 5 days notice, people are going to find them on LinkedIn. They're going to call them in a couple of years, and they're going to be like, I took Johnny under my wing, all this stuff, and he kind of just left me high and dry at the end.
Let's pause on that for a second, because I could tell you firsthand as a recruiter, we back channel. We are very connected. We know a lot of people.
It's not that hard. Yeah.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard of a thing, especially with LinkedIn now, and say, oh, I know them. They worked at that company. Let me reach out to that person. People are not mindful about burning bridges, or they don't give a shit. Or I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's a new world that we're living in. It can't be like this 2 years, burn that bridge, jump to the next job. People talk. And we have to change the process here.
You might have this invisible hand that really is someone you pissed off who's getting back channeled that is haunting you for years to come, and you're just not not aware of it.
No, not else. So how have you implemented this into your organization? Like straight up, like
how
do you communicate it? Like how does everyone know that this is part of it?
First of all, we've tried to have a ton of psychological safety check-ins. Otherwise, we've said, look, if you want to talk about your career here, no one is going to walk you to the door. No one's going to ask you to leave. Like, you can publicly hold us accountable to that. We've never done it. Like, other people have left with the day's notice, but we've never. Someone said, look, I'm not sure this is the right job for me. Like, we've never said, okay, then why don't you leave and whatever. So we've had to create the psychological safety. We have what we call our career transition program, career engagement program, which we called mindful transition before, but we just felt like is a more accurate name. And it's bilateral. It's, if you think you want to do something different, please, come to us and have a discussion, and we'll talk about what that means, and we'll set it up. And we even pay a bonus for extended notice period to make people know we're really serious about this. Like, we want you to work here. We want to have good client transitions. Flip side's also true. Sorry, go ahead. You want a question on that?
No, I'm just praising this because you talk. Let's talk about the other really quick elements. That it's not just about the employee; it's about the other team members. If you're in a client service situation,
clients
there's all these factors. Yeah. Oh my God! When I worked in the ad industry, the last thing a client wants is they have someone on their account that they've been working with that they enjoy. And then you get an email or a phone call. Hey guys, just want to let you know that now Adam's going to be taking over. Who the fuck? Who's Adam? No.
That is the number one thing that clients hate in client.
So there's an ROI to that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's an actual dollar amount to the client, the business, attrition of other employee satisfaction there, and being able to manage expectations internally and externally.
And so if Adam's the lead on a thing, we know Adam's leaving 3 months. Stacy joins the account team. Stacy starts to handle the weekly calls. Like 7 weeks later, Adam's already, then the client doesn't need to know Adam's leaving until the typical 2 weeks before Adam leaves.
Yeah. I want to backtrack for a moment, and this is my misstep as a podcast host for anybody who's taking notes on how I do my show. I'd love to ask authors, Robert, what is the hardest part of the writing process for you?
Hardest part of the writing process is actually not the writing process. It's marketing a book. If you talk to anyone, the marketing of a book is a full-time job. I think they, probably equal or more than the writing. I think for the writing side, for me, as someone who sort of tries to tinker with everything, it's like when to call it done. That's honestly when
going back to what we said in the beginning of the show, action over perfection.
When is it good enough? Yeah.
And is there that moment, or does it have to be like your publisher? Does it have to be your wife? Or is it internally inside Robert where you're like, and I am done. That's it. Let's go. Hit print. We're done.
Probably there's been different combinations of all of those across the book where it's just like,
exhaustion.
I know that I like to tinker with things. So it's just, if I find myself regressing, right? Like edits should kind of go like a funnel. Like they should go like a lot, little. I guess if I see the funnel opening back up, I'll be like, look, this is material I've been over 10 times and, didn't make that change.
Oh, yeah, it's paralysis there on that one. And at this point in your career, Robert, you've touched so many different ways, your companies, consultancies, your podcasts, newsletters, books, as well as charity.
Yeah.
What have you enjoyed doing the most? And where do you think you've made the greatest impact?
Yeah, look, the unifying theme there, which again, I've done this work on values and purpose. Like my purpose is to share ideas that help people and organizations grow. So if I figure out something that can make something better, like I get enjoyment out of seeing other people use that and leverage that. So that's what I enjoy. When other companies call and say, look, and I had one this week, we tried this mindful transition thing and it's made a huge difference. And that's the unifying theme among all these things, where if I can see the impact of something that, I tested out and shared with the world and it was able to make something else better.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Robert, what is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day of your life?
That's a good question. I'm not sure it's advice or more. I think,
mantra kind of mindset.
Yeah. So alignment. Like the only organizational principle I've ever believed in is like alignment. You set the thing at the top, you set it down. Everyone then is working on stuff that all rolls up. So like my daily process is realignment. Like I sat down this morning, I built this thing called Whole Life Dashboard. I looked at my quarterly goals. I looked at my year goals. I looked at my values for 5 minutes. I'm like, what can I do this week? What can I do today? that pushes me in that direction. So that constant realigning is why like I seem to get a lot done, but it's because I'm making sure that I'm getting the right things done and I'm prioritizing those over things that are not as important to me.
That's powerful. And we've all been through a lot in the last 14 months, but there's been good that has come out of it. And we call those silver linings. So I'd love if you could share with us a professional silver lining and a personal silver lining that you've experienced during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I was traveling a ton before the pandemic, and I think it was having a huge impact on my health. And so I think even for a firm that was virtual, realizing like, do I need to travel that much? I was doing a lot of speaking. A lot of that is virtual now. It's better for me. It's better for the company. So I'm not going back to how that was. Like, I think that's been thing. And then two, I think the pandemic has tested a lot of our assumptions. Like, can we do something this way? Does it have to be done this way? Like it's pushed a lot of things forward that were already moving in that direction and forced people to kind of jump in and embrace it. So similar, I think there are a lot of things in our business where like, we're not going to go back to how we did that before. Like we've learned something from this. And also just, I think, understanding the true value of human connection, which we're all missing now, and that Zoom is nice and it's great to see your friends thing on Facebook, but it's not the same.
Oh, we miss it. And last but not least, you've had an incredible career, inspiring. You've made a difference in people's lives. You've had to have that focal point that you need to look at, whether to pull yourself up when you're down, and in those moments when you have to harness that tenacity to drive you forward. And on the flip side of that, Robert, when you want to show gratitude, when you're thankful for your life, your family that you built, your success. Robert Glazer, what is your North Star?
I mean, my North Star for me, again, I think comes back to just my values and priorities. And I think when it's collective, not singular, when I am really stressed, when I'm overworked, I mean, that is what I do. I go look at like, all right, well, what do I not need to be doing? What doesn't matter? Where am I getting distracted? And I think that's a constant, process that we have to come back to and make sure that, I am making an impact, but I'm also, taking the time to enjoy and live in the present and enjoy the impact that I've already made. Because I think it's very easy when you get into the higher achiever world of just move the mark. Like every time you hit a finish line, just push to the next one. And so I've been really conscious to try to, particularly in the last year, to make sure that you get through a finish line and you celebrate that for a little bit.
Awesome. Love it. Robert, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And I want everyone to go check out Elevate. And where's the best place they could find this book?
They can find my Friday Forward, Elevate, the course. It's all at Robert Glazer, glazer.com.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you for spending time with us. I really appreciate your wisdom. Your take on culture is just phenomenal. And I think every organization really needs to listen to it, embrace it, and find elements that they can incorporate immediately to really truly make a difference. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the podcast. If you like this episode, please leave a review. A rating, it goes a long way. You know where to find us all at thepodcast.com. Remember, take care of each other, stay 6 feet apart, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.